Nestled in the heart of Central Europe lies a country where an entire city rises above thermal springs that have fed magnificent public baths since Roman soldiers first discovered them more than 2,000 years ago. Then come its people, celebrated across the world, not only for their remarkable intellect, but also for their unmistakable charm. Yet those familiar stories reveal only a small part of what this nation truly hides. Beneath the capital, a secret hospital carved deep into the surrounding cliffs was designed to withstand even a nuclear war. And even if you speak 3 different languages fluently, the street signs will still seem completely unreadable when you first arrive. It feels like a linguistic island standing alone in the very center of Europe. Modest in size and without a coastline, this is Hungary. But where does this island really lie? Right at the center of it all. Hungary is a landlocked country resting within the Carpathian Basin, a vast bowl-shaped region enclosed by mountains and dominated by one immense plain. Its borders meet 7 different nations, from Austria and Slovakia to Ukraine, Romania, Serbia, Croatia, and Slovenia. That helps explain why Hungary proudly calls itself the heart of Europe. For countless centuries, people, trade, and armies have all passed through this land. Just like the landscape, the people have layers. Hungarians are often warm and generous once they welcome you, though they can seem reserved at first. Even Budapest, home to nearly 2 million residents, is often described by locals as a small town, where almost everyone somehow knows everyone else. Instead, there are 2 subjects they usually avoid at the dinner table: politics and sports, because both can quickly spark arguments. Greetings are normally simple handshakes rather than kisses on the cheek. And in the capital, most younger people speak English, since it is often a basic requirement for employment. Another detail worth noticing is the naming system. Hungary stands alone in Europe by placing the family name before the given name, following the same order found in China, Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. That means the man many of us know as Ferenc Molnar is introduced at home as Molnar Ferenc, with the surname coming first. It seems like a small detail, yet it reveals something much deeper. Hungarians have long preferred to organize the world according to their own traditions. Nothing makes that clearer than hearing the language itself. Hungarian, or Magyar, does not belong to the Indo-European family spoken by nearly all surrounding countries. Instead, it is part of the Finno-Ugric language family. Its closest relatives are Finnish and Estonian languages, spoken over 1,000 miles away. Yet their speakers still cannot understand a single word of Hungarian. The alphabet contains 44 letters, while endings stack one after another until a single word can grow beyond 40 characters. In theory, you can always make it even longer. Across 1,000 years, as one empire replaced another, this language remained the island's protective moat. Borders, rulers, and kingdoms all changed. The words themselves never surrendered. Before we dive any deeper, tell us where you are watching from. Leave your country in the comments below, and let us discover just how far the reach of this little heart of Europe truly extends. On the surface, this country already feels difficult to understand. Yet the real surprise begins beneath the water. What makes Budapest truly stand apart is that it remains the only capital on Earth officially recognized as a city of spas, a distinction it has held since 1934. Hidden beneath its streets are well over 100 thermal springs, releasing nearly 70 million liters of warm mineral water every day into dozens of historic bathhouses above. No other capital comes remotely close to matching it. The tradition reaches back far beyond the nation itself. Around 2,000 years ago, Roman soldiers constructed the earliest baths in a settlement they named Aquincum, adapted from a Celtic word meaning abundant water. They even engineered systems that carried hot and cold water through the walls, while warming the floors beneath people's feet. Then history shifted again. After the Roman Empire disappeared, the Ottomans arrived during the 16th century and raised their own domed bathhouses. Several of them, including Rudas and Karali, still welcome visitors more than 5 centuries later. Roman, Ottoman, and modern Hungary continue sharing the very same waters. Yet these baths were never only about washing. Instead, they became the city's social heartbeat. Almost any morning, older men gather around floating chessboards in water approaching 100 degrees, discussing business, neighborhood matters, and daily life, one move at a time. The most famous of all, Széchenyi ranks among Europe's largest bath complexes, a vast Yellowstone palace surrounding clouds of steaming pools. In Budapest, relaxation is treated almost like an institution. But keep one thought in mind. The hottest water in the city is not the water most tourists ever experience. Part of it remains hidden beneath the castle, protecting a secret we will uncover a little later. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this journey, tap the height button below. It only takes a few seconds, yet it truly helps this video reach more people. And we sincerely appreciate every bit of your support. While the water gives this city its calm character, the streets are what make people stop and look twice. Across Europe, Hungarian women have earned a strong reputation, and the simplest explanation focuses on appearance. But the real story is far more compelling. Their style is genuine, understated, and elegant instead of loud or flashy. Yet locals will tell you, the first thing that stands out is not appearance at all. It is how quickly they read. People judge intentions within the first few minutes and remain famously unimpressed by anyone trying to display wealth. And there is substance behind that impression. In fact, this is a country whose women have quietly helped change the world. Hungarian biochemist Katalin Karikó received the 2023 Nobel Prize in Medicine for the discovery that made mRNA vaccines possible, the same science behind the COVID vaccines given to billions of people. None of this happened by chance in a country that never stopped investing in women's education. Today, women account for around 54% of university students in Hungary, outnumbering men across campuses. Much of the confidence and independence you notice on the streets grows from that foundation. Still, that reputation comes with a price. Some observers argue the beauty industry places real pressure on appearance, where cosmetic touch-ups are treated as routine, and keeping a year-round tan becomes almost a basic standard. Beauty turns into an expectation rather than simply a personal choice. That leaves one question worth thinking about. Where you live, is beauty valued more for being natural or for being carefully maintained? When night falls, you will find them, along with everyone else, gathering in a place unlike almost any bar you have visited. In Budapest, the city's most iconic nightlife unfolds inside abandoned ruins. It all began in the old Jewish quarter of District 7, where locals transformed neglected buildings nobody wanted into lively bars. They became known as romkoshma, or ruin bars, and the first Simple Kert opened in 2002. Rather than rebuilding it, they left much of it untouched and never completely restored it. Mismatched furniture, colorful graffiti, an old car turned into seating, and plants filled every corner. Today, it also serves as a community hub, with farmers markets, film screenings, and live music, while appearing on lists of the world's best bars. Soon enough, the idea of reviving abandoned buildings instead of demolishing them spread across Europe. Then comes the wine, especially one remarkable bottle. Tokaj Azu is a golden dessert wine, crafted from grapes transformed by noble rot in the Tokaj Hills, earning a memorable title from a French king. According to history, Louis XIV called it the wine of kings and the king of wines. A nation this small gave France a phrase it never took back. Then in summer, the celebration expands onto an island in the Danube. Every year, the Sziget Festival welcomes hundreds of thousands of visitors, with recent editions drawing over 400,000 people from more than 100 countries, nearly half from outside Hungary. For 1 week, a Danube island becomes one of Europe's biggest celebrations. Yet the city's darkest secret lies far beyond these famous bars. Instead, it lies deep beneath the castle built for what many feared was the end of the world. And soon, we will uncover it. Once daylight arrives, the backdrop to everything you've heard reveals itself as one of Europe's most beautiful cities. Many know Budapest as the Paris of the East, and one landmark explains that reputation immediately. The Hungarian parliament ranks as the world's third-largest parliament building, an immense neo-Gothic masterpiece extending roughly 880 feet beside the Danube. Its 315-foot central dome was intentionally designed to honor the year 896, when the Magyars first established themselves in this land. Within its walls are around 40 million bricks, almost 700 rooms, and nearly 88 pounds of genuine gold decorating ceilings and grand staircases. More than a building, it became the declaration of a small nation, determined to show the world how it saw itself. Beyond it lies a city born from two separate halves, hilly Buda on one side of the river and flat Pest on the other, officially united only in 1873. That transformation truly began with the Chain Bridge, the first permanent crossing between the two sides, opened in 1849 and watched over by its famous stone lions. It helped reshape two competing towns into one capital. From that point, remarkable landmarks appear one after another. The fairy tale white towers of Fisherman's Bastion, the enormous Great Market Hall, and the Dohany Street Synagogue, still the largest in Europe. Entire streets still reflect those ambitious decades when Budapest believed it was destined to stand among the world's greatest cities. And once night falls, as the parliament glows in gold above the Danube, it becomes remarkably difficult to argue that the city dreamed too boldly. Step inside a Hungarian home, however, and all that grandeur quickly gives way to a maze of unwritten rules waiting to be discovered. It begins with the beer. Hungarians have traditionally avoided clinking beer glasses, and the reason comes from a painful chapter of history. According to legend, after 13 Hungarian generals were executed by the Austrian Empire in Arad on October 6, 1849, the victorious officers celebrated by clinking their beer glasses together. In response, Hungarians promised to avoid the gesture for 150 years. Although that pledge officially ended in 1999, many older Hungarians never adopted the custom again. So, when your glass and a stranger's never touch, you are witnessing a century-old sorrow still resting quietly at the table. Drinking follows its own traditions as well. Palinka, a fruit brandy that often exceeds 50% alcohol, is treated almost like a ritual. Once the host pours a glass, you are expected to drink it, meet their eyes directly, and finish it in one swallow without hesitation. Refusing is seen not as rejecting the drink, but as rejecting the host's hospitality. And the everyday superstitions go much deeper than most visitors expect. Even flowers follow hidden rules. Bring an even number and you have arrived with a funeral bouquet instead of a gift. That is why bouquets come with odd numbers, 11 stems rather than 12. Whistle inside the house according to old belief, and you invite the devil indoors. Then comes New Year's tradition. Lentils are eaten to attract money, while pork brings luck because pigs dig forward. Chicken is avoided because it scratches backward and is believed to scrape good fortune away. Each custom quietly turns old history and deep-rooted fears into habits people still follow today. Before we continue, we are only about halfway through, so tell me, which of these traditions surprised you the most? So far, what has impressed you most about Hungary? The baths, the brilliant minds, the food, or something completely unexpected? Let me know in the comments. Yet there is one tradition almost no Hungarian will ever turn down gathering around the table. And before anything else, remember, this goulash is not a stew. On an American menu, it may easily be mistaken for a stew, yet Hungarians know it as a soup. Its name means herdsman, tracing back to the 9th century Magyar cattle keepers who slowly cooked it over open fires across the plains. Describe it as a stew in front of a Hungarian, and they will politely but confidently correct you, because this dish represents far more than an ordinary meal. Instead, it reflects the country's own beginnings. At the heart of Hungarian cooking sits paprika, made from dried peppers first carried north by the Ottomans during the 15th century. From sweet to intensely spicy, it gives color and character to much of the nation's cuisine. And now comes the part that almost sounds unbelievable. Remarkably, it was Hungarian paprika that allowed scientist Albert Szent-Györgyi to first isolate vitamin C, a breakthrough that earned him the 1937 Nobel Prize. The country's signature spice became part of Nobel-winning science as well. Beyond goulash comes halasle, the rich red fisherman's soup filled with river carp, catfish, and generous paprika. Another favorite is kurtushkalach, the famous chimney cake, made by roasting spirals of sweet dough until the outside forms a crisp, caramelized crust. Older Hungarians, however, still remember the harder decades under communism, when meat was often scarce, and lunch could be little more than boiled potatoes with fruit sauce. Meals shaped by years of scarcity. It is a cuisine that still carries the memory of abundance and hardship at the same table. Yet Hungary's wildest gathering does not happen around a table. Instead, it is an army of masked monsters marching to drive winter away. Every winter's end, the southern town of Mohács comes alive with the Buszójárás festival. More than 500 men, known as the buszos, wear heavy horned masks carved from willow wood and cover themselves in shaggy sheepskins. Crossing the Danube by boat, they parade through the streets before burning a coffin that symbolically represents winter itself. The tradition grew from the local Croatian community, and according to one legend, was meant to scare away both the harsh winter and the occupying Ottoman soldiers. UNESCO later recognized it as Hungary's first inscription on the Intangible Cultural Heritage List. The masks are works of craftsmanship, hand-carved from willow, and traditionally painted with animal blood. That craft has been passed from one generation to the next, with family workshops remaining open in Mohács throughout the year. These are not costumes made for a single celebration. They are family inheritances. Beyond that, Hungarians also celebrate name days. Nearly every first name is linked to a specific calendar date, giving people a second small celebration each year simply for sharing that name. And across the Great Plain, the Chicos, the horsemen of the grasslands, continue riding, as they always have. Most remarkable of all their signature move is a whip crack so fast it breaks the sound barrier, creating a tiny sonic boom with a flick of the wrist. Traditions like these remain visible for everyone to see. Yet some of Hungary's most astonishing history stayed hidden underground and secret for decades. Few countries prepare for disaster quite like Hungary. Between 1939 and 1944, beneath Buda Castle, workers carved an emergency hospital and bomb shelter into the area's natural limestone caves. Today, it is known as the Hospital in the Rock, a place designed from the beginning to function when everything above ground failed. When Budapest came under siege during the winter of 1944 to 1945, the facility quickly overflowed beyond its 94-bed capacity. Surgeons continued operating under candlelight, supported only by their own generator, while the city above was being destroyed. It had been created to keep saving lives, even as the world seemed to collapse overhead. And that was only the beginning. As the Cold War reached its peak in the early 1960s, the underground complex took on an entirely new role. The caves were reinforced into a nuclear bunker, with massive blast doors, air filtration equipment, and an independent water supply pumped from the Danube, allowing the site to operate after a nuclear attack. Those blast doors remain in place today. For many decades, the complex remained an official secret before finally opening as a museum in 2007. An entire hospital had spent years hidden underground, prepared for a war that, fortunately, never arrived. Even more remarkable, these tunnels belong to the same limestone network that supplies Budapest's famous thermal springs, linking peaceful spa waters and bomb-resistant shelters through the very same rock. Few places combine comfort and catastrophe within the same stone quite like this. And if hidden Cold War bunkers are exactly the places you enjoy discovering, consider subscribing, because we're always searching for the world's most extraordinary places. Perhaps a country prepared to survive the end of the world was always going to produce unusual minds. For a nation with fewer than 10 million people, Hungary has created a remarkable concentration of them. At least 13 Nobel Prizes are linked to Hungarians, while some estimates place the number as high as 16, giving the country one of the greatest per capita totals on Earth. The scale becomes even harder to believe when you remember how small the country is. Hungary could fit inside one American state, yet evidence of its influence may already be sitting on your desk. In 1974, Budapest architecture professor Erno Rubik created the Rubik's Cube. Nearly 500 million units later, it became the most successful toy ever sold. And that was only one invention. In 1938, Budapest journalist Laszlo Biro refined the ballpoint pen, leaving his name attached to it across much of the English-speaking world. Albert St. Georgi helped bring vitamin C into modern science, while John von Neumann designed the basic computing structure still used by nearly every machine today, including the device playing this video. But the strangest part of the story leads back to Hungary's language. That joke began after several Hungarian scientists crossed the Atlantic. Von Neumann, Wigner, Teller, and Szilard moved to America and became central figures in the rise of modern science. Their colleagues could barely understand the language they spoke, yet their intelligence seemed almost beyond human. So they invented an explanation. These men were not Hungarians at all, but visitors from Mars. The nickname stayed, and the latest figure in that tradition is still alive today. The most recent proof arrived in 2023. Catalin Carrico received the Nobel Prize for the mRNA breakthrough, showing that this small nation was still altering the direction of global medicine only a few years ago. Which leaves one unsettling question. How can a country with this much brilliance slowly begin to disappear? Now comes the contradiction that is hardest to ignore. The very country that continues producing some of the world's brightest minds is quietly becoming smaller with each passing day. Every day, Hungary loses about 89 people, not because of war or disaster, but because the numbers no longer balance. Deaths continue to outnumber births, while immigration replaces only part of the loss. Today, the population stands near 9.5 million, down from its peak of roughly 10.5 million in 1981. The fertility rate remains around 1 1/3 children per woman, far below the level needed to maintain a stable population. Current forecasts suggest Hungary could fall to about 8.5 million people by 2050. It is a country that has contributed so much to the world, yet struggles to hold on to its own population. And much of the story comes down to emigration. Once Hungary entered the European Union in 2004, many doctors, engineers, and teachers realized that crossing into Austria or Germany could dramatically increase their incomes. Large numbers chose to leave. Travel only 1 hour beyond Budapest, and you will find villages growing quieter, schools shutting down, and classroom bells that may never welcome another generation. Little by little, the island is watching its people drift away into the wider world around it. Then, the paradox becomes deeply personal when money enters the picture. For visitors carrying dollars, Budapest often feels surprisingly affordable. For locals earning and spending forints, the experience is very different. Between 2016 and 2025, consumer prices climbed by about 73%, the fastest increase anywhere in the European Union, according to Eurostat. In response, the government introduced major support measures, including lifetime income tax exemptions for mothers of 3 children, along with expanded family loans and child benefits. Even so, the trend continues moving downward. What feels inexpensive to a visitor can feel increasingly difficult for someone who has never left. And that leads to a question with no simple solution. Faced with a challenge like this, should a country welcome more newcomers, or focus first on protecting its traditions and the people already there? I'd genuinely like to hear where you stand. To understand modern Hungary, you first have to return to the wound that never truly healed. It has a name, and that name is Trianon. Everything changed on the 4th of June, 1920, when the Treaty of Trianon was signed after the First World War. In a single stroke, Hungary lost around 2/3 of both its territory and population. Overnight, millions of ethnic Hungarians woke up beyond the country's new borders, now part of Romania, Slovakia, or Serbia, despite never leaving their homes. borders shifted, the map was redrawn, and countless families suddenly found themselves separated by a line. More than a century later, that sense of loss still lives on in everyday life. Since 2010, Hungary has marked the 4th of June, the anniversary of the treaty, as the Day of National Cohesion. While most nations build holidays around victory, Hungary chose to remember what it lost. That decision reflects a much longer history of hardship. Trianon was neither the first tragedy nor the last. The Magyar tribes had settled the Carpathian Basin in the 9th century, around 895, before establishing a Christian kingdom under Saint Stephen around the year 1000. One point deserves clarification because it is often misunderstood. Hungarian belongs to the Finno-Ugric language family, yet the genetic origins of the Hungarian people remain debated, and they are not simply descendants of the Huns or the Turks. Then came the disaster at Mohacs in 1526, followed by roughly 150 years of Ottoman rule, and later, the fierce but doomed uprising against Soviet control in 1956. Through every setback, another loss followed. Yet the language endured, and the nation's identity endured with it. More than any monument or battlefield, that resilience is the Hungary still standing today. But the real Hungary stretches far beyond the scars shown on its map, especially after you leave Budapest behind. About 2 hours southwest of the capital lies Lake Balaton, the largest lake in Central Europe. It extends nearly 50 miles, remaining shallow enough to warm to around 77 degrees during the summer. Locals simply call it the Hungarian Sea. For a nation without a coastline, that description is almost literal. It becomes the place where families from across the country gather to swim, sail, and spend the summer. Not far away, another natural wonder waits. Lake Havis is the world's largest swimmable thermal lake. Its water flows from a spring deep inside a cave more than 100 feet below, staying above roughly 73 degrees even through the coldest part of winter. That means you can float there all year, even as snow settles along the shoreline. In warmer months, the surface can climb into the mid-90s, with imported water lilies spreading across much of the lake. You end up drifting through blooming flowers in steaming water, while the landscape around you remains frozen. Few places on Earth offer an experience quite like that. It also answers the question about affordability. Beyond the capital, Hungary is genuinely inexpensive by American standards. Then come the famous wine regions of Tokaj and Volcanic Eger, celebrated for its rich red wine known as bull's blood. Beyond them are historic cities that many travelers never visit, including Debrecen, Szeged, and Pécs, where Hungary's oldest university still stands. Leave Budapest behind, and prices fall, crowds fade away, and a very different side of the country begins to reveal itself. Travel anywhere in Hungary, and one feeling tends to catch visitors off guard. Trusting strangers here can feel remarkably natural and reassuring. That sense of security is supported by reliable data. On the 2025 Global Peace Index, Hungary placed near 17th, ranking among the 20 most peaceful nations worldwide. So this impression is not merely emotional, the numbers clearly confirm it. For Hungarians, however, statistics explain only part of the story. At Lake Balaton, swimmers may place a phone and wallet beneath a towel, leave them on the beach, and enter the water. Returning later, they often find everything quietly untouched. Nothing is locked away, and no camera stands guard. What protects those belongings is a quiet social rule: leave other people's property alone. In that sense, trust belongs to everyone, together. Respect also shapes the rules inside Hungarian homes. Guests remove their shoes at the entrance and usually arrive carrying something modest, perhaps flowers, wine, or chocolate for the host. Travelers still need to stay alert in practical matters. Exchange currency downtown, not at the airport, where unfavorable rates can quietly take a large cut. Before using the metro, always validate every ticket. Plainclothes inspectors can appear without notice. Paying immediately means a fine of 12,000 forints, around $33, while delaying can raise it to 50,000 forints, nearly $140. Trust may be widely shared, but responsibility always remains personal. Has anything about Hungary surprised you so far? Leaving a quick like genuinely helps more than you might think. Subscribe as well if you enjoy discovering places the wider internet often ignores. Only one final chapter remains, and this last one may completely overturn everything you expected. Beneath that quiet confidence lies an extraordinary record, because this small nation has achieved far more firsts than most people ever imagine. Back in 1896, Budapest introduced continental Europe's first electric underground railway, becoming the world's second oldest system after London. Even today, the line remains in operation, and UNESCO recognized it as a World Heritage Site in 2002. For such a small country, it outpaced nearly all of Europe beneath the streets. And remarkably, that was only the beginning of a much longer list of firsts. Another milestone followed in 1367, when the University of Pécs was established, becoming Hungary's oldest university and one of Central Europe's earliest institutions founded under papal approval. Then there is Olympic history. For a country with fewer than 10 million people, Hungary's achievements seem almost unbelievable. Measured by gold medals per capita, it consistently ranks among the world's very best, ahead of nearly every nation many times its size. Water polo tells that story better than anything else. Hungary stands as the most successful Olympic nation the sport has ever seen, collecting more gold medals than any rival. A relatively small country, yet repeatedly standing on the highest step of the podium. And even its most famous racing circuit managed to make history before anyone expected it. In 1986, the Hungaroring welcomed Formula One, becoming the first Grand Prix ever staged behind the Iron Curtain, with around 200,000 spectators arriving to witness the moment. Despite centuries of conquest and outside rule, Hungary repeatedly found new ways to lead instead of follow. So how do you define a place like this? A small nation whose language remains unlike anything spoken by its neighbors? There are Roman baths still producing steam after 2,000 years, alongside brilliant minds that quietly transformed medicine, computing, and even the toys remembered from childhood. It is a country both remarkable and deeply scarred at once. Yet that contrast is not a weakness in its story. Instead, it defines the nation's identity. A people who lost 2/3 of their territory and watched their empires disappear, yet never surrendered the one thing no invading army could ever translate. And that leaves one lasting question hanging in the air. Can Hungary transform its old wounds into strength once more, as it has so many times before? Or will it slowly retreat into the shadow of its own past? Because the things people believe are permanent. Language borders, even a place on the map. This small nation has spent 1,000 years proving they survive only through constant choice, renewed day after day. Otherwise, they simply disappear. Hidden in the northeast of Europe is a nation shaped by striking contrasts. Beneath its vast forests, fully armed nuclear missiles once remained concealed. Today, it produces more than half of the world's scientific lasers technology, so sophisticated that even NASA depends on it. Yet there is far more to this country than scientific achievement. It has one of the highest female-to-male ratios in the European Union, and is home to Baltic women widely admired for their beauty. Time and again, the nation bursts into life with remarkable celebrations, like Rasos and Uzgavenes festivals, unlike almost anywhere else. What few people ever mention is perhaps the biggest surprise of all. Although they grew up in what was once considered one of Europe's loneliest countries, Lithuania's young people are now ranked among the happiest in the world. This is the real life of Lithuania. Nearly 52.8% of Lithuania's population is female. With an average height approaching 5 feet 6 inches, Lithuanian women also stand among Europe's tallest. What makes their appearance distinctive is the way traditional Baltic elegance meets the confidence, vitality, and contemporary character of modern European life. The first thing many people notice about a Lithuanian woman is her snow-white skin and golden hair glowing like autumn sunlight. Most striking are her clear blue or deep gray eyes, giving her face a dreamlike, classic Baltic charm. Across the European Union, few countries record a divorce rate as high as this one. At roughly 2.5 separations per 1,000 people, Lithuania sits near Latvia and Estonia, yet its social values remain unexpectedly traditional. For many couples, a first marriage still begins without the trial period of living together. It creates a culture where commitment comes quickly, separation can follow just as fast, and both choices are made with striking sincerity. Still, modern life is clearly reshaping the picture. Now dating apps are woven into everyday life, while more young women prioritize independence instead of hurrying toward marriage. Lithuania is also unusually open to cross-border relationships within the EU, and some estimates suggest that 1 in 5 marriages includes a foreign partner. Among single women, about 1/4 are active on dating apps. Tinder leads the international platforms, Bumble follows, and local services such as Draugas still hold their place. So the attention Lithuania receives from abroad is not just an impression. Before we continue, tell us where you are watching from in the comments. And if you want to know which app locals genuinely use to meet Lithuanian women, leave the number 2 below and we will share it. Happy, independent, and thriving. That leaves one final mystery. Why do so many still find lasting love difficult to reach? On average, Lithuanian women live nearly 9 years longer than men. Female life expectancy reaches 81.9 years, compared with 73.1 for males. It is the second widest life expectancy gap anywhere in the European Union. This difference is no coincidence. Heart disease, together with major risk factors, affects Lithuanian men far more severely. Alcohol, smoking, and long-hidden stress all play a significant role. Rather than fate, the gap reflects years of accumulated habits and pressures. Another important piece of the story is emigration. Over the past 2 decades, many young Lithuanians have left for Scandinavia and Western Europe in search of better-paying jobs. Most of those who moved abroad have been men. During 2024 alone, men accounted for 73% of Lithuania's immigrants, while women made up only 27%. When earlier, male mortality is added to that steady outflow, a nation of fewer than 3 million naturally ends up with noticeably more women than men. What visitors first notice on the streets can be traced back to its true underlying cause. Yet Lithuania's quiet contradictions reach far beyond simple demographics and everyday statistics. It is also a country that has never truly lost its untamed, enduring, and deeply rooted wild spirit. From the midsummer bonfires people still dance around, to ancient taboos that many refuse to break, that untamed spirit has endured for centuries. It reaches back to the time when Lithuanians were Europe's last pagans, and every summer those traditions come alive once again. According to the latest World Happiness Report, Lithuanians under 30 rated their lives at 7.76 out of 10. That is the highest score for young people anywhere in the world. Not just across Europe, but across the planet. Meanwhile, Lithuania climbed from 19th to 16th place in the global rankings. For a small Baltic country, many people could barely locate on a map. The achievement is remarkable. So, what explains such happiness? The reasons are surprisingly practical. First, higher education is free. Housing costs remain lower than in much of Western Europe. At the same time, the economy welcomed young people during a period of rapid growth. Over a relatively short time, Lithuania built one of Europe's fastest-growing technology sectors, almost from scratch. Companies such as Vinted, Nord Security, and Tesanet helped fuel that expansion. As a result, wages increased at double-digit rates. Today, Vinted became Lithuania's first unicorn, with a valuation of around 8 billion euros. The country's tech ecosystem is now worth about 16 billion euros, almost 40 times larger than 10 years ago. Beyond that, Vilnius has been ranked the fastest-growing tech city in the European Union. Combine that with lively nightlife and government support for young creators, and it becomes easier to see why many choose to stay and smile. Perhaps the biggest reason is also the simplest. Everyone under 30 belongs to the first generation raised entirely in a free and independent Lithuania. They never experienced Soviet breadlines. They never had to grow up speaking in whispers. Yet behind the world's happiest young people remains a quieter shadow, rarely discussed, and still carried by the generation before them within the same families. Soon, we will uncover that hidden story. To experience Lithuania's ancient spirit, you wait for the longest day of the year. On the night of June 24th arrives Joninės, better known as Rasos, the Festival of Dew. It is a midsummer celebration that predates Christianity in Lithuania. It was first recorded in 1372. People weave flower crowns, light huge bonfires, carry torches in procession, and dance until the short northern night fades into sunrise. Fire stands at the heart of everything. For people who once worshipped the sun, the year's shortest night is meant to be celebrated with joy. Ancient magic is woven through every part of the tradition. Legend tells of a fern that blooms only once for a brief instant at midnight, hidden deep within the forest. Whoever discovers its flower is said to understand nature's secrets, read minds, and gain lasting happiness. That is why couples quietly wander into the woods together to search for the mythical fern flower, just as romantically as it sounds. Meanwhile, unmarried women weave wreaths from 9 or 12 herbs, set them afloat on rivers to glimpse their future leap across the flames, and wash their faces in the morning dew. Winter has its own ceremony, and this one hides behind a mask. During Užgavėnės, the festival before Lent, the streets fill with costumes and grotesque masks, before ending with the burning of a straw woman named Mor, a symbol of death and winter to drive away the cold and welcome spring. None of these customs survived by chance. Lithuania became the last country in Europe to adopt Christianity in 1387. Instead, its pagan festivals were never completely erased. They blended into the new Christian faith and continued to live on. The old spirit of Lithuania never truly disappeared. Rather, it simply learned to share the calendar. It also never wandered far from the forest, because this is a nation that almost seems to live among its trees. Around 1/3 of Lithuania is covered by forests. Add more than 2,500 lakes and over 800 rivers, and it becomes clear that nature here is far more than a weekend getaway. It is woven into everyday life. Locals take genuine pride in protecting this landscape, and it is reflected in their daily routines. Their traditions remain practical and unhurried. Families wander into the forest to gather mushrooms and wild berries, much like people elsewhere make a quick trip to the supermarket. Many families own a dacha, a simple summer cottage with a small garden, and weekends naturally lead to nearby lakes for swimming, fishing, or camping. Fresh food with few preservatives is strongly preferred, especially produce gathered by hand. It reflects a slower, closer relationship with the land than many of us experience today. Perhaps the biggest surprise is the coastline. The beaches of Palanga in the Curonian Spit are genuinely beautiful, with pale sand pine forests and remarkable silence. They often catch visitors off guard, especially those expecting a gray, post-Soviet landscape. Even the country has its own signature scent. Lithuania commissioned an official national fragrance known as the Scent of Lithuania, crafted by the historic French perfume house Gallimard, with notes of wildflowers, ginger, raspberry, cedar, moss, and wood-fire smoke. That final note was chosen for a very specific reason. It captures the scent of ancient pagan bonfires, sealed in a bottle, and presented to Lithuanian diplomats across the world. And much of what people gather from those forests eventually reaches the dining table, creating dishes that often surprise first-time visitors. Imagine a soup glowing the color of bubble gum. Meet šaltibarščiai, Lithuania's famous cold pink soup. It blends beets, kefir, and cucumber, topped with chopped dill and half a hard-boiled egg, before being served ice-cold on warm days. Honestly, it hardly looks real. Its flavor is bright, tangy, and refreshing, and the dish has become such a source of national pride that Vilnius hosts a yearly pink soup festival, while every summer it takes over social media. That startling color is part of the attraction. After that arrives the heavyweight. Next comes cepelini. These zeppelin-shaped dumplings are made from grated potato, filled with meat, then covered in sour cream and bacon. Rich, comforting, and filling, they remain deeply loved nationwide. Often considered the unofficial national dish, it carries the unmistakable taste of something cooked by a grandmother. Around it stands a cast of traditional favorites. There is kibinai, the savory meat pastry of the Karajan community in Trakai. Then comes shakotas, the spiky tree cake baked layer upon layer over an open flame for Christmas. Even here, fire still plays its part. Running through every dish is one simple pattern, a preference for natural, lightly processed ingredients. Fish and pork appear again and again. Local ingredients, unusual tastes, bold flavors, genuine history. So be honest, would that vivid pink soup tempt you to take the first spoonful, or would you quietly walk away? Let us know in the comments, because some of Lithuania's biggest surprises are not found on the menu. They are the quiet rules people follow every day. Keep in mind that Lithuania became the last nation in Europe to embrace Christianity, doing so only in 1387. Because the conversion came so late, its traces remain surprisingly visible today. The older pagan instincts never truly vanished. Instead, they slipped into the quiet customs of everyday life. In Lithuania, superstition is not something preserved behind museum glass. Instead, it survives through small routines that many people still follow without fully asking why. That quiet persistence is what makes these beliefs feel genuinely forbidden. Some, however, are surprisingly charming. For example, people avoid whistling indoors because it is believed to invite little devils and send your money away. They also avoid placing a bag directly on the floor. Doing so is said to let your wealth slip away. If a knife falls from the table, a male visitor is expected to arrive. And if marriage is in your future, never choose the table's corner, or the wedding may be delayed by 7 long years. Likewise, meeting a person carrying an empty bucket is considered unlucky. People also avoid shaking hands or passing objects across a doorway, choosing instead to step completely inside before doing either. Perhaps the most revealing custom involves a knife. Rather than placing it directly into another person's hand, it is first laid on the table so they can pick it up themselves. To an outsider, the gesture looks like simple politeness, almost too subtle to notice. Beneath it, however, survives an ancient discomfort with passing sharp objects directly between two people. A tiny refusal to tempt fate, repeated countless times every day. Even during a toast, Lithuanians look directly into your eyes while saying cheers. Looking away at that moment is believed to invite years of deeply personal bad luck. None of this is performed for show. From the revived remove of faith, honoring the pre-Christian gods, to the quiet rituals around the dinner table, the same pagan spirit from the ancient bonfires still quietly shapes the country. Yet beneath the superstitions and warm smiles remains a contradiction. This seemingly happy nation rarely speaks about openly. Beyond the postcard image lies a chapter few people ever expect to see. Today, Lithuania is home to the happiest young generation on earth. Yet it once stood at the top of the European Union for people losing their lives to despair. Back in 2000, this small nation recorded a higher loss of life per capita from that same darkness than any other country across the entire EU. Take a moment to think about that figure. Hope and hardship exist in the very same place. But a closer look reveals why the pattern matters. Within the same World Happiness Report, where Lithuanians under 30 rank first globally, those over 60 place only 44th. The burden was never shared equally across society. It has always rested most heavily on the oldest generation. Many spent their entire working lives under Soviet rule, learned to remain silent, and came of age through long, dark winters when temperatures regularly fall to -20 degrees Celsius, around -4 Fahrenheit, while the sun barely rises above the horizon. Combine that with rural isolation and alcohol, and the result is a wound deeply shaped by history rather than by youth. This is not a country where young people are truly unhappy. Instead, it is a country where many older people were never fully given the chance to heal. Yet this is where the story begins to change. The numbers are finally moving. Today, the rate is dropped by nearly half, from around 45 per 100,000 in 2000 to roughly 19.6. Prevention programs, stronger social services, and a generation willing to discuss emotions their grandparents could never express have all helped. Young Lithuanians are leading that transformation. So the paradox is undeniable, but it is not a tragedy trapped in time. Lithuania is gradually learning to embrace happiness openly. How can the same nation produce the happiest young people on earth while still carrying such deep old sorrow? What do you think explains it? Share your thoughts below. Even so, beneath all that emotional weight is a country with a playful, rebellious spirit, one that once created its own tiny republic. Inside one neighborhood of Vilnius, residents declared their own independence. On April 1, 1997, April Fool's Day, a date that perfectly captures its playful spirit, the artists of Užupis proclaimed a tiny breakaway republic of their own. They created a flag, appointed a president, and adopted a constitution with 41 articles. About 7,000 people live there, including roughly 1,000 artists, while that constitution is mounted on a wall along Popio Street in more than 20 languages beneath 3 gentle commandments. Don't fight. Then come 2 more simple rules. Don't win and don't surrender. The Constitution itself feels like a small work of genius. Some articles are surprisingly heartfelt. Everyone has the right to be happy, followed immediately by, everyone has the right to be unhappy. Others embrace pure absurdity. One article declares that a dog has the right to be a dog, while a cat is under no obligation to love its owner. Even more remarkably, a later revision granted artificial intelligence the right to believe in the goodwill of humanity, making it the first constitution anywhere in the world to mention AI. When Pope Francis visited Vilnius in 2018, he stopped there and gave it his blessing. Although it began as a joke republic, people treat it just seriously enough for it to matter. A short drive farther north lies an even stranger distinction. In 1989, France's National Geographic Institute calculated the exact geographic center of the European continent and placed it here, about 26 kilometers north of Vilnius, near the village of Pernuškis, at 54 degrees 54 minutes north and 25 degrees 19 minutes east. Today, a granite pillar, topped with a ring of 12 stars, marks the location, and Guinness officially recognized it. By that careful measurement, this small country is not on Europe's edge at all. It stands at its very center. Quirky, independent, and fiercely proud Lithuania shows that spirit everywhere. But nowhere is that pride expressed more loudly than on a basketball court. Put the question to almost any Lithuanian, and 2 answers usually come back without hesitation. One is Catholicism, the other is basketball. Calling the sport a second religion is sincere here, because it has become part of the country's identity and a shared language linking every generation. More than a national obsession, basketball functions almost like a founding legend for this small country. Every legend needs an enemy, and in Lithuania's story, that role belongs to the Soviet Union. During the Soviet era, Kaunas club Žalgiris defeated CSKA Moscow and claimed the championship. What appeared to be a basketball victory became a silent challenge to the empire from a nation still unable to speak openly about independence. After Lithuania regained freedom in 1990, its national team earned 3 consecutive Olympic bronze medals. Those medals came in 1992, 1906, and 2000. Led by icons such as Arvydas Sabonis and Šarūnas Marčiulionis. For Lithuanians, defeating the country that once occupied them before the world, in the sport they loved most, carried enormous meaning. At that point, it is no longer only a game. It becomes a nation reclaiming the power to tell its own story, one still unfolding today. Even today, Lithuania remains among Europe's strongest basketball nations, appearing at Eurobasket 2025, while NBA player Jonas Valanciunas continues representing the flag. Missing the 2024 Olympics was painful, but it did not erase that belief. The same pride and faith reach far beyond the court, even into places that seem pulled from a fairy tale. Next, let us see exactly where those places can be found. Begin with the country's most haunting landmark. Around 12 kilometers north of Cholet stands the Hill of Crosses, a modest rise covered with well over 100,000 crosses. Estimates place the total above 200,000, with some suggesting nearly 300,000 left by generations of pilgrims. This is not a cemetery, but a lasting symbol of defiance. During Soviet rule, the hill was bulldozed at least 5 times. Yet after every destruction, local people quietly returned at night to plant the crosses again. The site lies near 56.0153 North 23.4167 East, where Pope John Paul II prayed in 1993. Later, Pope Francis also visited in 2018. From there, the journey becomes a fairy tale. Trakai Island Castle rises on its own island in Lake Galve, a red brick fortress begun in the 14th century and completed around 1409. It remains the only island castle in Eastern Europe. Enjoy a warm kibinai by the shore while looking across the water. The coordinates are near 54.6517 north, 24.9336 east. Farther northwest stretches the Curonian Spit, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a narrow strip of sand about 98 kilometers or 61 miles long, lined with towering dunes, pine forests, and fishing villages, often called the Desert of the North. At the country's heart is Vilnius Old Town, another UNESCO site, and one of Eastern Europe's largest historic districts, where Gothic Renaissance and Baroque streets weave together. Near 54.6817 north, 25.2877 east. Before visiting, there are a few practical details worth knowing. For most travelers, June through August is the best time to visit. People under 40 will almost always speak good English. Just do not expect to buy alcohol late at night. Most shops stop selling alcohol in the evening. Yet not every landmark belongs in a fairy tale. Some were hidden underground, heavily armed, and kept entirely secret. Beneath the quiet landscape of a national park, hidden below what appear to be nothing more than grassy hills, the Soviet Union concealed one of its earliest underground missile bases, the only facility of its kind ever constructed in Lithuania. Completed in 1962, after 2 years of work by more than 10,000 laborers, Plokština did not hide a symbolic secret weapon. It housed a real one. Inside the silos rested R-12, Dvina nuclear missiles, buried roughly 30 meters beneath the ground. Imagine what that reality meant for the people living directly above them. Every missile carried a nuclear warhead capable of reaching around 2,000 kilometers, enough to hit much of Western Europe from a forest where local farmers quietly picked mushrooms. For years, the base remained one of the Soviet Union's best-kept military secrets, so effectively concealed that American reconnaissance failed to identify it until 1978. After operating for about 12 years, the missiles were removed, the facility closed, and the concrete structures left in silence. Today, that silence has become a museum. Since reopening in 2012 as a Cold War museum, Plokština has welcomed growing numbers of visitors, including around 35,000 in 2024, who descended into the cold missile silo to experience just how close the last century came. Set within Žemaitija National Park, surrounded by lakes, bogs, and forests, it lies only about 48 kilometers, or 30 miles from the Baltic coast. A place once built for global destruction has become a peaceful stop on an ordinary country drive. Next, the story leaves behind the hidden weapons of the last century and turns toward a treasure formed millions of years ago. Along Lithuania's coastline, a different kind of gold has been washing ashore for thousands of years, though it was never made of metal. This warm, honey-colored amber, created from fossilized tree resin, has been collected and traded since prehistoric times, along the ancient Amber Road, stretching as far as the Etruscans of Italy. Known as Baltic gold, its name is far more than clever marketing. Amber predates most modern nations, and hidden within it is a legend of love. According to Lithuanian legend, the sea goddess Girata lived beneath the Baltic in a magnificent amber palace, where she fell in love with a mortal fisherman named Kastides. Furious at their romance, the thunder god Perkunas destroyed the palace, or so the legend says. Since then, people have believed the amber washing onto today's beaches is made from the shattered remains of her palace, while the smallest, clearest pieces are her tears. First recorded in 1842, the legend transforms a simple walk along the shore into something deeply emotional. Even the scientific story carries its own sense of wonder. Around 90% of the world's amber comes from the Baltic region, where the resin formed roughly 44 million years ago, preserving sunlight from forests that disappeared long before humans arrived. The craft is centered in the town of Palanga, whose Amber Museum occupies a 19th-century palace and displays around 28,000 specimens. If discoveries like these have surprised you, consider subscribing, because this small country still has its most remarkable secret waiting ahead. From fossilized light preserved for millions of years, the journey now moves to a newer kind of light, one on which some of the world's greatest laboratories now depend. Consider something that sounds almost impossible. A nation smaller than most American states produces over half of the world's ultra-fast scientific lasers, including the femtosecond systems used at the very edge of modern physics today. Among their users are NASA, CERN, IBM, Hitachi, and Toyota. Lithuanian lasers reach more than 80 countries and operate inside 90 of the world's top 100 universities around the world. From a population below 3 million, Lithuania quietly supplies the light behind some of the planet's most advanced research laboratories every day. That scientific success was only the beginning. Vilnius then developed into one of the European Union's largest fintech centers, where several hundred licensed companies now serve tens of millions of customers across Europe. More than 130 payment and electronic money institutions operate there, handling flows above 160 billion euros annually. Behind that growth is a system so efficient it almost feels absurd. With a digital signature, a company can be created within 24 hours, while a license issued in Vilnius opens access across the entire European Union. Around 2018, this same country was also ranked first worldwide for public Wi-Fi speed as well. Speed, it seems, became part of the atmosphere itself. But viewed from farther back, the contrast becomes even more striking. Today, Europe's last pagans, once worshipping the sun and dancing around midsummer flames, now manufacture pure light for NASA. A country whose forests once concealed nuclear missiles now exports some of the world's most peaceful technology imaginable today. This small nation has always created light first, through fire, later, through amber, and today, through lasers. That is Lithuania in one remarkable picture. Within it exist both the world's happiest young generation and the grief carried by those who raised them. Pagan flames stand beside femtosecond lasers today. Measurable beauty exists alongside a loneliness that remained unnamed for decades. Calling all of this strange would be easy until you recognize that normal is often only a decision your own country inherited and never truly examined. Lithuania challenged nearly everything, lost almost everything, yet still discovered how to create its own light anyway. And if this small nation surprised you, neighboring Latvia may surprise you even more. That next story is already waiting just ahead for you. Smaller than Houston, this island is little more than a volcanic ridge rising from the Indian Ocean. Around it stretches a lagoon so still the shoreline reflects like a mirror. Yet across this tiny land, 4 religions meet on the same street corner. Even more unusual, Mauritius has no standing army and claims it has no enemies. Nowhere else did the dodo ever exist, and today, this former home of the vanished bird has just over 1 million people. Despite its size, they are ranked the happiest on the African continent. This is Mauritius, a paradise in the Indian Ocean. Covering only about 790 square miles, Mauritius is easy to overlook on a map. Its land area is smaller than the average American county, and you can drive from one side of the country to the other in under 2 hours. Yet about 1.3 million people live there, making Mauritius one of the world's most densely populated nations, with nearly 1,700 people in every square mile. Lying in the Indian Ocean around 1,100 miles east of Madagascar, this crowded island continues to defy expectations. Year after year, Mauritius remains the happiest country in Africa. The World Happiness Report ranked it 78th globally in 2025, ahead of dozens of much richer nations, while placing comfortably first across its continent. That brings us to the real question. Why has it happened here? The answer has little to do with the beaches. Instead, it begins with a national decision to invest in people. In Mauritius, education is free all the way through university. Healthcare is also free for everyone. Students, older adults, and people with disabilities pay nothing for public buses or the light rail. That means a child born in a fishing village on the southern coast can travel to school, earn a university degree, and receive treatment in public hospitals throughout life without paying. Across Africa, that model is still extremely rare. Mauritius has created a genuine welfare state on an economy producing about $11,900 per person each year. It also enjoys Africa's highest human development score and one of the continent's strongest passports. But don't reach any conclusions about wealth just yet. We'll return to that subject later, and probably not where you expect. Before we go any deeper, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and whether Mauritius was already on your travel list. We read them all. Unlike most nations, Mauritius has no army at all. Not a reduced force, not a ceremonial unit, simply none. Ever since gaining independence in 1968, the country has never created a standing military. Instead, it relies on a police force, a paramilitary unit known as the Special Mobile Force, and a coast guard to patrol its waters. Nothing beyond that. There are no tanks waiting in military bases, no fighter jets overhead, and no generals commanding troops. More surprising still, Mauritius claims no enemies, disputes, no borders, fears no neighboring country, and has never fought a war since becoming an independent nation. By 2025, Mauritius was ranked Africa's most peaceful country and 22nd worldwide, ahead of much of Europe. Governments change through elections rather than coups, under a parliamentary system modeled on Britain's. Which naturally leads to one obvious question. So where does the money go when a country does not maintain an army? It goes back to its people. While many nations invest enormous sums in weapons, Mauritius has directed those resources towards schools, healthcare, and public transport. Its strongest defense has become a population that is educated, healthier, and better supported. Rather than relying on soldiers, its security comes from a passport accepted in nearly 150 countries and a long tradition of avoiding other nations' conflicts. A country with no army, no enemies, and the happiest people in Africa. Yet there is still one question left. As the people of Mauritius will tell you, paradise always comes with a price. If this story has surprised you already, tap the hype button below. It only takes a few seconds, yet it helps this documentary reach many more viewers. We truly appreciate your support. Beyond the resort strip, a different Mauritius quietly comes to life. In its markets and family kitchens, the language is rarely textbook English or French, but Mauritian Creole, a warm tongue with French roots, spoken daily by almost everyone, despite never being declared an official language. It was never imposed by law. Like the island's people, it formed naturally from generations of communities brought together here. Even today, life revolves around familiar traditions. 3 generations often share the same home. The sea remains at the heart of everything. Then comes the market. Step inside Port Louis Central Market, and every sense is awakened together. Stacks of mangoes and lychees rise high, while the sharp scent of chili and cumin fills the air. Around you, vendors shout prices, expecting an answer. Very little is truly fixed. Here, bargaining is never considered rude. It is part of the exchange, the moment where strangers slowly become familiar faces. Flowing beneath everyday life is sega, the island's traditional music and dance. Created by African slaves, once brought here in chains. Its heartbeat comes from the ravan, a drum made from stretched goatskin, heated over an open fire until it begins to sing. What once echoed with sorrow now celebrates joy. A Mauritian wedding may last for days, blending Hindu, Tamil, and Creole traditions into one continuous feast that eventually welcomes much of the neighborhood. Speak with anyone who has lived here, and the answer is remarkably similar. People rarely remember Mauritius for its buildings alone. They come because of its people, and they remain because those people make them feel they truly belong. Here is where Mauritius separates itself from much of the world. Along a single road, a Hindu temple, a Catholic church, a mosque, and a Chinese pagoda stand within sight of one another, sharing the same neighborhood. It is the only African country where Hinduism is the largest religion. The latest census shows nearly half the population is Hindu, about 1/3 Christian, and almost 1/5 Muslim, alongside Buddhists and smaller communities. Beyond Nepal and India, very few places have a Hindu majority, and none of them are in Africa. So how did an African island become so different? It was not the result of chance. The answer lies in a difficult history, because this island had no native population at all. Everyone living here traces their roots to people who crossed an ocean. African slaves, Indian laborers, Chinese traders, and European settlers all arrived under very different circumstances, yet ended up building one society together. When leaving is no longer an option, learning to live side by side becomes a necessity. With time, that shared necessity slowly grew into mutual respect. Mauritius closes government offices for Diwali, Eid, Christmas, and the Chinese New Year. The entire country pauses to celebrate holidays linked to faiths that many citizens do not personally follow. Local people describe it simply: "We are the real melting pot, and we respect each other." Some still debate whether an island shaped mainly by Indian and Creole heritage should truly be considered African. Yet that debate overlooks what really matters. Mauritius reflects a possibility that many divided societies struggle to imagine. It shows what living closely together can become when people choose cooperation over division. Keep this picture of harmony in mind, because before this journey ends, you'll hear these same proud islanders reveal something that doesn't match the postcard image at all. More than the scenery, even the calendar feels extraordinary here. Somewhere across Mauritius, nearly every month brings another celebration waiting to begin. Among them all, Maha Shivaratri stands above the rest. Every year, hundreds of thousands of Hindu pilgrims, many walking barefoot, carry wooden shrines across the island toward the mountain crater lake of Ganga Talao, whose waters they revere as deeply as the Ganges. It has become one of the world's largest Hindu pilgrimages beyond India, taking place on a tropical island separated from the subcontinent by an ocean. What makes an African lake attract such a river of believers? The answer reaches back to the laborers who arrived generations ago, bringing their faith with them. Unable to return to the Ganges, they created a sacred place of their own instead. Yet the story continues. During Taipusam Kavadi, the streets fill with devotees who pierce their skin in an expression of devotion. Then, Diwali covers entire neighborhoods in light. Holi fills the air with clouds of color. Eid, Christmas, the Chinese Spring Festival with its dragons and red lanterns, and the Sega Festival, celebrating the island's African heritage, continue the cycle, one after another, throughout the year. Perhaps the clearest proof of that harmony is surprisingly simple. When one community celebrates a holy day, schools close, shops close, and neighbors still gather together. That kind of unity cannot be staged. A nation only pauses for celebrations it truly embraces together. And once every festival ends, the feast begins. Because on Mauritius, food is celebrated with the same devotion as faith itself. When four religions can live on the same street, four culinary traditions can easily meet on one plate. Mauritius proves exactly that. Its cuisine was shaped as Indian, African, Chinese, and French traditions shared the same island for 300 years and gradually blended together. The best place to begin is the one dish almost everyone claims as their own: dol puri. This soft flatbread is filled with ground yellow split peas, then cooked on a hot griddle before being wrapped around curry and pickle. The busiest food stalls serve thousands every day to people from every community. It costs very little, yet it may be the island's most shared meal. Right beside it comes gâteau piment, a small, spiced lentil fritter fried until crisp outside and soft inside. From there, the flavors keep expanding, with Creole rougaille, a vibrant tomato stew slowly cooked with thyme and chili. Indian biryani and samosas bring layers of spice. Fresh octopus arrives straight from nearby reefs, either grilled or prepared as vindai. Chinese-style fried noodles, known as mien frites, are sold from many of the very same street corners. To finish, there is coconut cake, or a chilled glass of aluta sweet and filled with basil seeds. In a single afternoon, the country's history can be experienced through its food without opening a history book. Every family protects its own recipes, handing them down from one generation to the next, like a family name. Now here's a question. When you explore a new country, what captures your attention first? Its food, its people, or its landscapes? Let us know in the comments below. By 1847, Mauritius had achieved something almost nowhere outside Britain had done before. That year, the island issued its own postage stamps. The most famous were the blue penny and the red penny. Since then, one Mauritius blue penny has sold for well over $1 million. Today, one tiny stamp can be worth more than a beachfront home, protected behind glass inside a museum in Port Louis. So what makes it so valuable? Only a handful remain, and collectors around the world have turned that rarity into extraordinary wealth. In the end, value often exists because enough people choose to believe the same story. Another famous story arrived when American writer Mark Twain visited in the late 1890s. His unforgettable words suggested that Mauritius was created first and heaven was later copied from it. The island still proudly repeats that quote today. There is also one more surprise. The giant tortoises wandering through its nature reserves did not originally come from Mauritius. The island once had native giant tortoises, but they eventually disappeared. To restore their ecological role, conservationists introduced their close relatives, the Aldabra tortoise, allowing them to spread seeds just as the originals once did. In a way, an ancient gardener had finally returned to the garden that had lost it. The Sega drum also received UNESCO recognition as part of the world's living heritage in 2014. Officially, Mauritius still has no national language, yet perhaps the most surprising fact comes before all of these, because the island's story began when nobody lived there at all. For much of human history, Mauritius remained completely uninhabited. There were no native people, no tribes, and no First Nation. More than 1,000 years ago, Arab sailors knew the island and called it Dina Arobi. Although the Portuguese reached the island in the early 1500s, they never settled there. The Dutch established the first colony in 1598, naming Mauritius after a prince. Later came French rule, when it became Île-de-France, before the British eventually took control. Modern Mauritius was built by successive empires. Every Mauritian traces their ancestry to people brought from overseas. African slaves were forced onto sugarcane plantations, and after slavery was abolished, Indian laborers arrived to work those same fields. European settlers also came to govern the colony and remained on the island. At the southwest tip stands Le Morne, a towering basalt mountain recognized by UNESCO. where escaped slaves hid among the cliffs instead of returning to chains. It was during that era that Mauritius's most famous inhabitant, the dodo, entered history. Found nowhere else on Earth, the flightless dodo evolved for ages without predators and never learned to fear danger. When sailors arrived with hungry crews and animals aboard their ships, the bird simply watched. Less than a century later, the species had vanished forever. It trusted humans completely, and that trust became its downfall because it never learned to flee. Today, not a single complete dodo survives anywhere in the world. Instead, the bird lives on in Mauritius's national coat of arms, transforming a national emblem into a warning. Mauritius has already experienced what it means to lose something forever. Today, its people are confronting a different kind of loss, one unfolding far more quietly. As the story continues, even paradise reveals that it comes with a price. But every paradise comes with a cost. For decades, Mauritius has built an image that truly deserves its reputation. None of what you've seen so far has been exaggerated. Now look beyond the postcard. More than 75% of the food consumed in Mauritius arrives from overseas. That means living costs rise whenever shipping is disrupted, storms strike, or the national currency weakens. For years, the Mauritian rupee has steadily lost value, while average wages have struggled to keep up. A laborer harvesting sugarcane, the crop that helped build the nation's economy, may earn in an entire month less than a visitor spends on a single night at a nearby luxury resort. Visitors can photograph the island's most beautiful beaches without spending a cent. Yet the worker cleaning that same shoreline may need more than a day's wages just to provide dinner for the family. That is the side no travel brochure ever shows. To tourists, Mauritius feels like paradise. To many locals, earning an ordinary salary, daily life is far less effortless, while many retirees struggle simply to make ends meet. Locals sometimes sum up the contrast with one striking phrase: they are happy only on YouTube. Through the camera lens, the island looks like heaven. Away from the videos, rent still has to be paid. The economic reality is just as real, with public debt approaching 90% of the country's annual economic output. Many talented young Mauritians, educated free of charge, now consider building their futures abroad, where their skills are rewarded more generously. Although poverty remains lower than in much of Africa, it still affects parts of the rural south. None of these realities erase the island's beauty. They simply make Mauritius a real place rather than a perfect one. Both sides exist together, and understanding the island honestly means accepting them at the same time. The story does not end here. This is only the turning point, because Mauritius has overcome hardship before. Time after time, the island has found a way to recover, so now the question belongs to you. Knowing the cost behind this paradise, would you still choose to experience life here, or do you believe the dream is overstated? Share your honest opinion in the comments. We read every comment you leave. Positioned within the Indian Ocean's cyclone belt, Mauritius faces storm season almost every year. From roughly November through April, powerful systems begin to arrive. When a powerful tropical cyclone strikes, roads can disappear under floodwater within hours. Power lines collapse, and schools and businesses across the island close as families wait safely behind shuttered windows. That is the familiar threat Mauritians have long accepted. The danger emerging today moves far more slowly, yet its consequences reach much further. As ocean temperatures continue rising, the coral reefs surrounding Mauritius, the same reefs that soften the waves and protect marine life, are turning ghostly white and dying. With widespread bleaching documented throughout 2024 and 2025. At the same time, the sea steadily pushes farther inland, while the island's famous beaches shrink grain by grain. One estimate suggests climate damage now costs nearly 0.8% of the national economy each year, through damaged coastlines and constant reconstruction. That reality is especially severe for an island like Mauritius. Small islands have no distant interior waiting for them. Once the coastline is lost, there is simply nowhere else to retreat. There is no second homeland beyond the horizon. The same lagoon that gives Mauritius its image of paradise is also among its most vulnerable landscapes as the planet changes. Even the island's familiar rhythm of warm, wet months, followed by cooler, drier ones, is beginning to lose its balance. Little by little, the ocean is reclaiming the shoreline. Yet if any island understands the pain of losing a living species forever, while also understanding how hard the next one must be protected, it is Mauritius. The story of recovery begins with what was lost, because the dodo was not the only species Mauritius watched disappear. Across the centuries, more than 100 native plants and animals disappeared, leaving under 2% of the island's original forest, most of it protected inside a single gorge in the southwest. Few places on Earth have suffered greater ecological loss, yet few have also achieved such remarkable conservation success. The Mauritius kestrel, a small falcon found nowhere else, tells that story better than anything. By 1974, the entire population had fallen to just 4 birds. Not 4,000, only 4. At that point, it had become the rarest bird on Earth, standing only one disastrous breeding season away from sharing the dodo's fate. Yet a small group of biologists refused to accept that ending. They hand-raised chicks, protected nesting sites, and fought to save every single egg. Now hundreds of Mauritius kestrels fly above those forests. The echo parakeet, once close to disappearing, recovered enough to leave the endangered list in 2020, while the pink pigeon has also made an impressive return. The island, once known as a textbook case of extinction, has quietly become a textbook case of recovery. Even so, the story is far from perfect. Thousands of the island's fruit bats, the only mammal found naturally only in Mauritius, have been culled under government policy, despite strong objections from conservationists who argue that a threatened species should never be managed like a pest. Even so, 4 birds eventually became hundreds. For an island that once watched a species vanish forever, that is far more than a statistic. It is hope taking flight. The journey begins at Chamerow, where even the soil seems to behave differently. In a clearing surrounded by forest, the ground rises and falls in bands of 7 colors: red, brown, violet, blue, and several more spread across the dunes like layered ribbons. Each shade was created by volcanic minerals cooling at different speeds. Yet the real mystery is that the colors remain separate. Mix 2 of those shades in your hand, and after a while, the grains begin sorting themselves again, returning to their own colors. The sight feels more compact than photographs often imply, and that should be said honestly, but its strangeness is still unmatched. From there, the landscape shifts to Le Morne, the great basalt mountain where escaped slaves once found refuge, now a UNESCO site, rising above the southwest with both beauty and painful memory. Moving inland brings you to the Pamplemousses Gardens, one of the oldest botanical gardens in the southern hemisphere, where enormous lily pads spread across the water like floating steps. Out at sea lies Île aux Cerfs, home to a golf course created by 2-time Masters champion Bernhard Langer. The course is reachable only by boat, and turquoise water surrounds every hole. Elsewhere, Black River Gorges conceals waterfalls beneath the island's remaining native forest, while Blue Bay Marine Park protects coral gardens that you can float above until all sense of time disappears. These places may look completely different, but they were born from the same source: an ancient volcano that cooled, hardened, and was slowly carved by the ocean into landscapes people now travel across the world to witness. At first glance, Mauritius appears to be a young island, only around 8 or 9 million years old, shaped by volcanoes that, in geological time, are practically newborns. Yet hidden inside its volcanic rock, scientists discovered tiny zircon crystals, nearly 3 billion years old. 3 billion. That makes them hundreds of times older than the island itself. So how can such a young volcanic island hold crystals older than most continents? The answer lies beneath its surface, where a lost continent remains buried. Known to geologists as Mauritia, It is a fragment of ancient continental crust left behind submerged and forgotten when India separated from Madagascar and drifted northward. In many ways, Mauritius is a youthful island resting upon the remains of a much older world. The island itself is younger than the land concealed below it. Another remarkable surprise is waiting at Le Morne. Fly above its cliffs and look straight down, and it truly seems as though a giant waterfall is spilling from the island into the deep ocean, as if the sea itself were cascading away. But that breathtaking scene is not actually what it appears to be. Instead, what you are really seeing is sand and silt carried by powerful currents down a steep underwater channel, creating the perfect outline of a waterfall that does not exist. Your eyes still believe it. Even the island's extinct volcanic past remains visible before you. Finally, Trou au Cerf stands quietly in the middle of a town, its ancient crater reminding every visitor that this tropical paradise was first born from fire, long before it ever became a home for people. Go back 60 years, and this island was still poor, relying on just one crop, sugar alone. Yet rather than accept that future, it achieved what many small nations never do. It deliberately reinvented itself again and again. Textiles came first, followed by tourism, banking, then technology, and seafood industries. Crucially, every new industry was established before the previous one lost momentum completely. Today, Mauritius stands as an upper-middle-income country with one of the highest per-person incomes in sub-Saharan Africa at around $11,900. It has already entered the rich world's income bracket once and is steadily making its way back again. There is also the passport mentioned at the beginning. Mauritian citizens can enter 147 destinations without needing a visa. That passport ranks around 27th globally and remains one of the strongest anywhere across the African continent. Beyond tourism, the island serves as a financial gateway linking India and Africa, supported by tax treaties with more than 45 countries. Every year, over 1.4 million tourists arrive, more visitors than the island's own population, on a place small enough to drive across before lunchtime with ease. That is how a nation with neither an army nor oil carved out global importance. It achieved that not through force, but through education, stability, and a determined refusal to rely on a single industry alone. And if this journey surprised you even once, take a moment to like and subscribe. It is the greatest way you help us continue discovering remarkable places like this together. If you are wondering whether the trip is worth it, the answer is yes. The key is choosing the right season. The ideal time to visit is the cool, dry period, usually from May through November, when the weather is pleasant and the risk of cyclones stays low. Instead, avoid the height of the storm season between January and March. After arriving, follow the advice locals give most often. Support the people who live here by spending beyond the resort gates, not only within them. Take time to try dalpuri from a street vendor. Wander through the market in Port Louis and bargain, because that is part of the experience. Keep in mind that some places may charge visitors extra, and that a few famous attractions, including Chamarel, often appear more spectacular in edited photos than they do in person. Keep your expectations balanced, and you are unlikely to leave disappointed. After everything, the honest conclusion is simple. For travelers, Mauritius truly feels like a paradise, and one of the few that remains less crowded than many of its more polished neighbors. The most rewarding experience, however, does not come from a lounge chair. It comes from the people who call this island home. Those who prepare the food, play the drums, and keep 4 different faiths living side by side on the same street. Arrive with respect. Remember that behind every resort is a real community with real challenges, and the island can offer something no travel brochure ever will. Looking ahead, Mauritius knows its future cannot depend on beaches alone. It is investing in a blue economy, technology, and industries that have never before been central to its growth. In the end, Mauritius's greatest treasure has never been its lagoon. It has always been the people who found a way to share a small island without allowing it to fall apart. And if you want to continue discovering the world through stories like this, another paradise with another hidden secret is waiting in the next journey. In the middle of a Reykjavik winter, parents can sit inside a cafe while their baby sleeps outside, alone, bundled in a pram against the bitter cold. Nearly 7 in 10 Icelandic children are born to unmarried parents, yet the fact barely draws attention. The same country has almost no crime, keeps no army, and once put its bankers behind bars. Home to only 400,000 people, this island is roughly the size of a small state, yet it has given the world some of the strongest men ever known. Its people eat shark only after months of fermentation make it safe, while below them, the earth repeatedly splits apart and fire rises through the ice. Somehow, every contradiction fits into one place, the land of fire and ice. Welcome to Iceland. What first catches the camera is their unmistakable northern appearance. Icelandic women are known for pale eyes, defined Viking features, and a natural comfort with who they are. Stay a little longer, however, and appearance quickly becomes secondary. What stays with you is the fierce independence beneath it. That independence helps explain a reality much of the Western world still finds unsettling. About 69% of Icelandic children are born to unmarried parents, the highest share in Europe. Within Icelandic society, neither situation carries shame. Unmarried parents raising a child are simply another family, while single motherhood is not treated as failure. Nor is this considered cultural decline. Instead, Iceland built its society on the belief that marriage does not complete a woman. For 16 consecutive years, it has led the global gender equality rankings and remains the only country to close over 90% of the gap. In 1980, Iceland elected Vigdis Finnbogadóttir, the world's first female president and a single mother. Even marriage does not erase a woman's identity here. Icelandic women keep their own names throughout life instead of adopting their husbands, and the history behind that choice is revealing. That history reached a turning point in 1975. For one day, 90% of Icelandic women withdrew from paid work, cooking, and childcare, bringing the country almost to a halt. Suddenly, fathers arrived at work with children beside them, while many households ran out of food before nightfall. The lesson became impossible to dismiss and never faded. Beauty was only the surface. What truly defines Iceland is a society where women are not expected to build their lives around men. Wherever you're watching, leave your city or country below. I genuinely want to know how far this tiny island story has traveled. And once marriage carries so little social weight, one question becomes unavoidable. What purpose does it actually serve here? Iceland's answer is more unusual than most outsiders expect. Unlike most countries, Icelanders generally don't use inherited family surnames. Because of that, a family of 4 may easily have 4 different last names. Even the national phone book ignores surnames entirely, arranging everyone by first name, including the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, a winter stroll past a cafe in Reykjavik often reveals prams lined up outside on the pavement. Babies sleep peacefully inside while their parents stay warm indoors. To first-time visitors, the scene can seem surprisingly neglectful. For Icelanders, however, it's simply common sense. Fresh, cold air is believed to help babies sleep better and breathe more easily. With crime so uncommon, parents have little reason to worry that anyone will touch the pram. Relationships follow a different timeline here. Many couples live together for years, raise children, and build a family long before they choose to marry, if they marry at all. The wedding doesn't create the family. It simply arrives after the family already exists. Behind it all is a practical reason. In a country this small and isolated, where nearly everyone shares some distant family connection, inherited surnames were never essential for identifying people. Identity came from your parent rather than a family dynasty. Remember just how small Iceland is. Somehow, this tiny nation achieved something that much of the world never could, and we'll soon discover why. If you think this video deserves more attention, please click the hype button below. Every hype takes only a few seconds, yet it helps this video reach more people. We truly appreciate your support. Despite having a population of only about 400,000, Iceland has produced more champion strongmen than nearly any other country in the world. The answer reaches back centuries. Icelandic farm workers earned respect by carrying the Husafell stone, a massive rock weighing around 186 kilograms, or more than 400 pounds. Moving it across a fixed distance marked the passage from boyhood to manhood. Back then, strength was never a pastime, but an everyday necessity on farms without machines, where the unforgiving climate demanded it. Combine a traditional diet rich in fish and lamb, with generations raised on Viking sagas celebrating the strongest man as the hero, and the result is something no modern gym can recreate. The real secret isn't found in supplements, but in 1,000 years of survival that rewarded physical strength. As many Icelanders still like to say, there is no reason to be alive if you can't do deadlift. Yet these very same fearless people also share a surprisingly deep love for something much sweeter. Ice cream is the real national obsession here. Icelanders don't save it for summer. They enjoy it all year through darkness and snow. Even a blizzard won't stop them. At 5 below zero, Icelanders get in their cars, drive through the storm, and line up outside an ice cream shop. The windshield may be frozen, the temperature 23 degrees Fahrenheit, yet people still wait for soft serve. It's more than dessert. It's a social ritual, a place to gather and meet friends. That habit fits a country where winter keeps people indoors for months. When the weather controls daily life, one comforting ritual is better than waiting for a summer that barely comes. So Icelanders don't wait. Their other national favorite is the hot dog, made from lamb, beef, and pork, topped with crispy fried onions and sweet brown sauce. For about 80 years, a tiny Reykjavik stand called Bæjarins Bestu has been famous for those hot dogs. Even Bill Clinton once waited there. Locals usually order ein með öllu, one with everything. To go with it, they reach for Coca-Cola. No country on earth drinks more Coke per person than Iceland, averaging close to 400 bottles a year for each resident. That works out to roughly 8 every week, while the average American drinks only about 3. That love of sweet food makes the other side of Iceland's menu feel even more surprising than most visitors expect. Later, I'll show you the one traditional dish here that can actually kill you if it's prepared the wrong way. Across Iceland, almost every town, no matter how small, has its own public geothermal pool. More importantly, the nearby hot pot is where much of Iceland's social life unfolds. People gather there through rain and snow, relaxing in steaming water while the cold air surrounds them. It has never really been about swimming. Instead, it serves as the town square, where news spreads, conversations happen, and neighbors remain connected. One rule, however, is never ignored. Everyone must shower thoroughly, without a swimsuit, before entering, since the water contains almost no chlorine. That endless hot water comes from the same underground fire that also makes Iceland dangerous. Around 9 out of 10 homes are heated directly by geothermal energy, while nearly all of the country's electricity comes from renewable sources. One of the world's cleanest energy systems exists because of the same volcanic forces that continue to threaten entire towns. Iceland has taken that natural advantage far beyond home heating. Greenhouses, powered by underground warmth, allow this near-Arctic island to produce tomatoes, cucumbers, and even bananas. Defying its northern latitude, its most famous pool was actually created by accident. Few visitors realize the Blue Lagoon, with its milky turquoise water, attracting travelers from around the world, originally formed from runoff at a power station. Fire and ice have never truly been rivals here. Yet this society that gathers daily in shared pools also follows some of the world's most unusual laws, beginning with the names parents are allowed to give their children. Beer remained illegal in Iceland for a full 75 long years. Wine and spirits had returned decades earlier, but beer stayed banned until the 1st of March 1989. One important reason behind that long ban was political. Beer had become closely associated with Danish rule, helping keep the ban alive for years. Today, the day it finally ended, is celebrated each year as Beer Day. Choosing a name, however, is another matter entirely. Parents cannot simply give a child any name they like. It must come from an official register or receive approval from the Icelandic Naming Committee. Today, there are over 2,000 approved names for boys and another 2,000 for girls, while every new one must still follow Icelandic grammar and spelling. The explanation goes back to Iceland's patronymic naming system. Every name must continue to work as someone's son or daughter through future generations. For a country that values rules so highly, its first institution appeared remarkably early. The Althing. Iceland's parliament was founded in the year 930, making it one of the oldest parliaments still operating anywhere on Earth today. It also held another remarkable record for centuries. Throughout recorded history, Iceland was the only country without mosquitoes, because the climate was simply too cold for them to breed. That changed in October 2025, when the first 3 mosquitoes were finally discovered. As the ice continues to warm, even that quiet distinction slowly disappeared. So far, which surprised you most? The names, the laws, or the strongmen? Tell me in the comments below. Strange laws may be harmless enough. The ground beneath these people, however, is anything but truly safe. Beneath it all, the ground is far from stable. After nearly 800 years of silence, the Reykjanes Peninsula in southwest Iceland came back to life. Since 2021, it has erupted around 12 times, while one section alone has split open 9 separate times since December 2023. Most recently, an eruption lasted 21 days during the summer of 2025. Scientists believe this is not an isolated event and expect volcanic activity to continue on and off for years. For one community, the consequences have already been devastating. Grindavik, a fishing town of roughly 4,000 residents, was evacuated in late 2023 after streets cracked apart and magma forced its way upward beneath them. Today, much of the town remains empty, abandoned, not because of war or economic collapse, but because the earth itself drove people away. Yet Icelanders don't simply retreat. Engineers have built massive barriers of rock and earth to divert advancing lava away from homes. Meanwhile, sensors stand ready for the next tremor, supported by a national attitude that somehow believes things will work out. There is even an unusual form of tourism. Whenever authorities declare conditions safe, people head out to watch fresh lava burst into the night sky. In Iceland, danger has been carefully transformed into one of the world's rarest spectacles. This is daily life, where 2 continents slowly pull apart, with fire rising from below, while freezing winds and icy skies above try to knock people off their feet. The sky here swings to extremes as well. During the depths of winter, around December, Reykjavik receives only 4 or 5 hours of daylight, with the sun appearing around 11:30, before disappearing again by mid-afternoon. Summer then turns everything completely around. Near the June solstice, the sun barely sets, allowing people to mow their lawns and even play golf at midnight. The wind, however, is what really hurts. Iceland lies directly in the path of North Atlantic storms, and from autumn through spring, powerful gales can rip a car door clean off its hinges, which is exactly why rental companies here even offer wind insurance. The weather can shift from sunshine to sleet, and then to a complete whiteout within minutes. Locals even have a saying about it: if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. So how do people stay happy through months filled with darkness and relentless wind? Mostly by relying on one another. The hot pools, the close-knit towns, and that quiet refusal to panic do not defeat the darkness. They simply face it together. Even with all of that, Iceland ranks year after year among the 3 happiest countries on Earth. Enduring winters like these also shape the most extreme part of this entire list: the food people choose to put on their plates. This is where your stomach truly gets put to the test. Now comes the dish Iceland is famous for, a piece of shark that could kill you if it were eaten fresh. The reason is simple. Greenland shark meat naturally contains large amounts of urea and other compounds that become toxic, making it inedible for most of history. Even so, Icelanders discovered a way to make it safe. First, the meat is buried underground to ferment before being hung to dry for 4 or 5 months, allowing the toxins to break down. The result is hakkarl, small pale cubes of shark with an ammonia smell strong enough to sting your eyes, usually followed by a schnapps known as Black Death. Meat, once too poisonous to eat fresh, is patiently transformed into a traditional dish served with pride. Not surprisingly, most outsiders struggle with it. Anthony Bourdain described it as the worst thing he had ever eaten, while Gordon Ramsay became sick at the table after trying to swallow it. Another British chef said the texture felt like chewing a mattress soaked in something much worse. Yet fermented shark is only the beginning. During the midwinter feast, Icelanders also serve an entire sheep's head, singed, split in half, and boiled. Alongside it, the eye still stares back at you, accompanied by soured ram's testicles pressed into cakes. What many squeamish visitors overlook is that none of these dishes were ever created to shock people. Instead, on a freezing island, without refrigeration, and with summers too short for reliable farming, survival depended on fermenting, salting, and drying every usable part of an animal, or facing starvation before spring. What seems like a challenge today was once a strategy for staying alive. Today, Icelanders eat these foods out of pride rather than necessity. Could you actually swallow it? Let me know below. Would you try Iceland's fermented shark? Or would this be one tradition you'd gladly skip? Because that same resilience later shaped a decision about the country's banks that almost no other nation has dared to make. Instead of rescuing the people behind the crisis, Iceland sent its bankers to prison. As the financial crisis of 2008 spread worldwide, governments hurried to save failing banks. Iceland rejected that approach. It allowed its banks to collapse before taking the executives responsible into court. In total, about 36 bankers were convicted and received more than 90 combined years in prison. Public money went to homeowners trapped by mortgages worth more than their houses, not to failed lenders. Only a few years later, Iceland's economy had rebounded faster than much of Europe. Take a moment to think about it. The bigger mystery isn't why Iceland jailed bankers, but why almost no other country followed. And that's not its only surprise, because Iceland has no army at all. Although it has no standing military, Iceland has still ranked as the world's most peaceful nation for 17 consecutive years. National security depends on the Coast Guard rather than an army of soldiers. That reputation is reflected in daily life. Crime is so uncommon that doors are often left unlocked, and babies sleep outside in prams. Even the Prime Minister drives herself and walks through Reykjavik without bodyguards. The financial collapse also inspired a fresh start. Citizens worked together to draft a completely new constitution. But once it reached Parliament, the proposal stalled and has never become law. Even so, that story shows how fragile progress can be. So what binds together a country that imprisons bankers and functions without an army? Part of the answer lies in a language unlike any other still spoken today. In many ways, their language works like a time machine. Over the past 1,000 years, Icelandic has barely changed. Because of that, modern Icelanders can still read medieval sagas almost as they were originally written. Few languages have preserved that continuity. That continuity exists because the language is carefully protected. Instead of importing foreign vocabulary like most nations, Icelanders create new words from older roots. Their word for computer, for example, combines ancient terms meaning number and prophetess. Even the word for telephone comes from an old term meaning thread. The original saga manuscripts are regarded as national treasures and recognized by UNESCO as part of the world's documentary heritage. Their everyday way of speaking is equally distinctive. Titles matter far less than first names. Doctors, professors, and even the Prime Minister are commonly addressed that way. Icelanders are generally direct, and almost everyone speaks excellent English, making the island far more approachable than its remote location suggests. One expression captures that national mindset better than anything else. It'll sort itself out. That's the attitude they bring to violent weather, restless volcanoes, and the long winter darkness.
It reflects a quiet determination not to panic over what cannot be controlled.
And a language preserved across 1,000 years isn't their only ancient tradition. Even today, many Icelanders still stop short of dismissing the existence of elves. More accurately, they're called the hidden people, not simply elves. This isn't a legend invented merely for visitors. In a University of Iceland survey, over half the population said they could not completely dismiss the existence of elves. Most respondents didn't claim elves were truly real. They simply refused to insist they weren't. And that attitude still shapes real decisions today. Some road projects have actually been delayed or redirected to avoid rocks believed to house the hidden people. Near Reykjavik, construction equipment reportedly kept failing until engineers redesigned the route around one such stone. The Roads Authority explained those changes simply as respect for local cultural tradition. At first glance, it's easy to smile at the story. But beneath it lies something deeper. For centuries, Icelanders have lived on an island that erupts, freezes, and constantly pulls itself apart. It's a landscape that has never allowed people to feel fully in control. In many ways, the hidden people express the same lesson the island teaches every single day. Disturb nature carelessly, and there will always be a price. Today, many Icelanders still invoke the hidden people when opposing projects that would damage untouched landscapes. In that sense, the belief is less about magic than humility expressed through ancient folklore. Respect for unseen forces comes naturally here, and with good reason, because the ground beneath their feet is literally pulling itself apart. In Iceland, that statement is true in the most literal way imaginable. Iceland lies directly atop the mid-Atlantic ridge, the immense geological fracture where the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates first meet. As those two massive plates drift apart by about 2.5 centimeters each year, the island itself is gradually becoming slightly wider with every passing year. Nowhere else on Earth offers this same experience. Here you can actually stand on the exposed boundary between two continents and walk directly into the rift. At the historic site where Iceland's parliament was founded, a broad valley even lets visitors cross between the continents on dry land. Not far away, a water-filled fissure allows divers to float between the plates in glacial meltwater so clear that visibility can reach nearly 100 meters. This geological boundary powers Iceland's famous mix of fire and ice, feeding around 130 volcanoes, along with countless geothermal hot springs. Even today, new land continues to emerge here. During the 1960s, an underwater volcanic eruption lifted an entirely new island above the ocean's surface. Those powerful geological forces also shaped some of the planet's most otherworldly landscapes. And there's both a safe way and a dangerous way to experience them. That distinction means far more than it first appears. Iceland feels like a gallery of impossible landscapes, where waterfalls crash deep into narrow canyons. Some waterfalls even let you walk behind the curtain of falling water. Nearby volcanic black sand meets towering basalt columns, while Diamond Beach is scattered with glittering chunks of glacier ice resting on the dark shoreline. During clear winter nights, the northern lights spread ribbons of green across the sky. Catching them safely takes some planning, since most of Iceland's famous sites are linked by the ring road that circles the entire island. Driving yourself is a favorite way to explore, but Iceland's weather changes quickly. Locals always recommend checking both the forecast and road conditions before every stretch of the journey. They also warn visitors about sudden sneaker waves that have swept people from the shore into the sea. Some visitors have lost their lives after standing just one step too close to the water. Iceland's beauty always comes with real danger. If these extraordinary landscapes amazed you, hit like and subscribe so the channel can keep bringing you to remarkable places like this. Because beyond the postcard views are a few remarkable quirks you simply won't find anywhere else on Earth. Christmas in Iceland feels more like a folk horror tale. Instead of a single Santa Claus, children are visited by 13 mischievous characters, known as the Yule Lads. Lurking behind them is the legendary Christmas cat, a giant creature believed to devour anyone who doesn't receive new clothes before Christmas. Harsh as it sounds, the story had a purpose. It encouraged families to finish their autumn wool work when warm clothing was essential for survival. Then comes another unusual reality: family connections. One company has mapped the DNA of nearly the entire population. Since most Icelanders are distantly related, students even created an app so couples can check before a relationship goes too far, whether they share a grandparent. Its famous slogan says it all: bump the app before you bump in bed. And the surprises don't end there. Following the financial crash, McDonald's completely left the country. Not a single McDonald's restaurant remains today. Meanwhile, a purebred Icelandic horse can never return once it leaves the island, protecting its bloodline. And one long-standing statistic has only recently changed. For nearly all of Iceland's history, sheep outnumbered people. Around 2024, however, the human population finally moved ahead. Strange as all this seems, the results speak for themselves. 17 consecutive years as the world's most peaceful country. 16 years ranked first for gender equality. This small and unusual nation quietly leads where it matters most. Taken together, the picture becomes clear. A nation of about 400,000 people that imprisons bankers, approves baby names through a committee, eats fermented shark, and still ranks near the top of almost every important list. Step back, and those contradictions begin to make perfect sense. Children born before marriage, no standing army, and a quiet belief in elves all spring from the same foundation. Living on an island shaped by fire and ice taught Icelanders that not everything can be controlled. Instead, they learned to adapt and place their trust in one another. Perhaps that's the true secret behind the land of fire and ice. Not the volcanoes or the legendary strongmen, but a small, unusual country that stopped trying to control everything and somehow ended up functioning better than many that never did. Before you leave, consider one final question. How much of what you think is normal is simply something you've never seen done differently?